All right, so get ready because we are diving into a story that is a mess, okay? Like, seriously messy.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking like legal battles and political maneuvering
Uh,
and twists and turns,
yeah,
enough to rival like your favorite courtroom drama. And it all starts with, New York City's mayor, Eric Adams,
right.
and a case that just like vanished. Poof, gone, thanks to the Justice Department.
It's wild, right? It really is like, well, you know those magicians, how they pull the rabbit out of the hat?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like that, but the rabbit is justice. It's
Oh,
disappearing.
exactly. Okay, so we're going to use this CBS News article to figure out just how that trick works. And get this, the first shocker is Danielle Sassoon.
Okay?
She was the acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York.
Right.
Resigns. Just like that. Now, that's the office, the SDNY, the one that goes after, like, the biggest fish in the legal sea.
Huge cases.
So a resignation like this, major ripples through the whole system.
Resignations happen, of course, but the timing here, it's what's raising eyebrows.
Yeah.
It comes just days after Sassoon's office gets this really strange directive
Uh-huh.
from the DOJ.
Oh, wow.
Drop the corruption case against Mayor Adams.
What?
Yeah, and not just any case either.
Right.
These are allegations of bribery,
Oh, wow.
campaign finance violations.
Okay.
This is the kind of stuff that usually, makes headlines for weeks.
Big news, and not just drop it, but drop it without even looking at the evidence.
Yeah.
It's like saying, we don't care what the fake tastes like, just throw the whole thing away.
Right. I mean, it is a highly unusual move. It almost seems like they're trying to bury something,
Huh.
Now, the memo from Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove,
Okay.
he does say that this decision doesn't have anything to do with the integrity of the prosecutors working on the case.
Okay, so why even say that?
Right. Why even mention that unless someone was worried about their integrity?
Yeah, it's like trying to convince us that the dog didn't eat the homework. When you can see the crumbs all over his face.
Exactly. And to make it even weirder,
Yeah.
it wasn't dismissed with prejudice,
Right.
but without,
So.
meaning they could bring these charges back later.
Oh, okay, so it's like hitting the pause button on a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Not like turning it off entirely. The DOJ could just hit play again anytime they want. And there's another clue.
Ooh.
Points to some serious, like, behind-the-scenes drama.
What's that?
Even after that DOJ order, those prosecutors, they hadn't actually dismissed the charges.
Seriously. So it's like they're being told to jump,
Mm-hmm.
but they're just standing there saying, wait a minute.
Exactly. It definitely suggests, like, some pushback, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe they don't agree with this whole dropping the case without evidence thing. Could this be tied to the upcoming mayoral election? Is somebody trying to, protect Adams until after all the votes are cast?
That's possible. I mean, wouldn't be the first time politics and the law have gotten a little too friendly.
Right. And then there's this whole thing with Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Oh, yeah. What about her?
She claimed that she had no idea the SBNY hadn't actually followed the directive.
Really? I mean, come on. It's like the captain of a ship saying they didn't know the engine was on fire.
Seriously, hard to believe, right?
Uh-huh.
And then on top of all of that, we have the Biden-appointed U.S. attorneys,
Right.
the ones who got fired this week.
Oh, yeah, that was strange. And fired in a rather, let's say, unceremonious way, wouldn't you say?
What do you mean?
They were informed via email instead of the, the traditional ask to resign.
Seriously.
Yeah. It's really a departure from the usual, how they usually do things, which raises even more red flags, don't you think?
Yeah, it's like somebody just hit fast forward on like presidential transitions
Okay.
and maybe skipped a few steps. Usually there's like a little more, finesse.
Yeah, you're right. New presidents, they usually do appoint their own U.S. attorneys. But this time, it just feels rushed, abrupt, even.
Yeah,
Especially with this whole Adams case happening at the same time. It makes you wonder, right?
right.
Is there a connection? Like a bigger picture we're not seeing yet?
So we've got this case dropped without looking at the evidence,
Uh-huh.
a prosecutor resigning, the mysterious circumstances,
Yeah.
possible internal conflict in the DOJ, a bunch of U.S. attorneys getting, like, the boot
Mm-hmm.
via email. And then to top it all off,
What?
the DOJ memo.
Yeah.
It actually says that Mayor Adams had, like, restricted ability to help the Trump administration
Okay.
with their immigration policies. It's almost too much to keep track of.
It's a lot, for sure. And this detail about Adams and the Trump administration, it's like, when you're doing a puzzle
Yeah.
and you find a piece and it doesn't quite fit anywhere yet, but, it's got to be important.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling. Could this be why they dropped the charges? Like maybe the DOJ saying, hey, we'll let this one slide if you play ball with us on something else. Is that even legal?
Ooh, that's dangerous territory. If that's true, it means the DOJ is using its power for political gain,
Right.
basically turning the justice system into, like, a bargaining chip. But
Wow.
we are speculating here. We need more information before we can connect these dots.
Right, right. It's like we're putting together a puzzle, but with half the pieces missing. And the DOJ isn't exactly helping, are they?
No, they're not. Being pretty tight-lipped about the whole thing, which is why it's so important for journalists, I mean,
Uh-huh.
to keep digging, keep asking the tough questions, holding those in power accountable. The more information that gets out there, the clearer things will become.
Okay, so let's try to make sense of what we do know. We have a mayor facing some pretty serious corruption charges,
Right?
sudden resignation from the person in charge of prosecuting those charges,
Yep.
DOJ directive to drop the case without even looking at the evidence,
Uh-huh.
and a possible link to, like, the Trump administration's immigration policies. It sounds like something out of a political thriller or
It
something.
really does. I mean, this is a real-life example of how power, politics, and the law, they can all intersect
Yeah.
in some pretty unpredictable ways. And it makes you ask some fundamental questions,
Like what?
like about our justice system. Is it really blind? Or could it be swayed by political pressure? Are those in power held to the same standards as everyone else? These are questions we need to be asking, especially when something as unusual as this happens.
Absolutely. What about this without prejudice thing?
Hmm.
You said earlier the DOJ could bring the charges back later.
Right.
Do you really think they'll do that, especially with the elections so close?
It's like a ticking time bomb. The DOJ has planted this seed of doubt, and it's hard to imagine we'll just let it sit there.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
They could use these charges as like leverage before the election or after, depending on how things go politically speaking.
So you're saying the DOJ might be waiting to see who wins before they decide what to do?
I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't be the first time a legal decision was influenced by political calculations. But that's just one interpretation. There could be other things going on that we don't know about.
Right.
The point is, this without prejudice clause,
Mm-hmm.
it gives the DOJ a lot of power and a lot of flexibility. And it raises some serious concerns about the potential for manipulation, political interference.
This whole situation, it's like a tangled web, and every time we pull on one thread,
What happens?
we just uncover more knots, more questions.
Yeah, it's like the more you know, the less you understand. But that's how these big legal and political battles go, right? Rarely simple answers or easy explanations.
So where does this leave us? What's the most important takeaway for like our listeners who are trying to make sense of this whole mess?
I think the biggest takeaway here is vigilance.
What do you mean?
This case, it shows how important it is to be aware what's happening behind the scenes in our legal system. Question those in power. Demand transparency, accountability.
You're right. We can't just sit back and assume everything's going to be okay, especially when you have powerful forces trying to like manipulate the system for their own gain. Yeah, it's like we walk into a crime scene or something,
Uh-huh.
but we don't know who the victim is,
Right.
who the perpetrator is, what the motive is, just a bunch of clues scattered around, and that feeling that like something's not right.
And that feeling is exactly why this case is so, I don't know, fascinating, concerning even. It reminds us that the legal system, with all its rules and procedures, it's still operated by people, susceptible to pressure, ambition, and sometimes making decisions that aren't exactly in the best interest of justice.
Okay, so let's try to recap a little. We started with what seemed like a pretty straightforward corruption case against Mayor Adams.
Right.
And now we're here, this labyrinth of political intrigue, resignations, all this behind-the-scenes stuff.
It's a lot.
Case dropped without looking at the evidence. Top prosecutor walks away. DOJ memo with more holes than, like, Swiss cheese. Whispers of a connection to the Trump administration. It's a lot to process.
It really is. And the fact that we have so many unanswered questions, it only makes it more, I don't know, intriguing. It makes you wonder, is this just political maneuvering? Or is there something more going on? Is this like a one-time thing or a sign of a bigger problem at the DOJ?
And maybe the biggest question, what happens next?
Right.
Because that without prejudice dismissal, it basically leaves the door wide open for those charges against Mayor Adams to come back. So what do you think?
Yeah.
Given everything we've talked about, do you think we'll see those charges come back after the mayoral election?
Honestly, it's really anyone's guess. But if I had to bet, I wouldn't bet on this case just going away. Too much at stake. Too many powerful people involved. The timing of it all. The DOJ stepping in like that. lack of transparency, possible political motivations. It all points to maybe a second act for this case.
So it's like they're setting the stage for a sequel.
Yeah, kinda.
And we're just like waiting to see what happens next. But this isn't a movie, right? This is
Right.
real life, real consequences for, everyone involved.
Exactly. This isn't just some legal drama playing out in the news. This is a story that could actually change things for New York City and maybe even how we think about justice and accountability in this country.
So for everyone listening out there, I want to say, keep following this story.
Yeah, please do.
Don't just take the headlines, at face value. Dig deeper, look for different viewpoints, and ask the tough questions. Because sometimes the most important details are like hidden in plain sight, just waiting for someone to connect the dots.
Very well said. This whole case, it's a reminder we can't just sit back and watch. We need to be involved. You know, demand transparency, hold those in power accountable, and never take justice for granted.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. But remember, the conversation doesn't end here. So keep those questions coming, keep searching for answers, and keep diving deep into the issues that matter most. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.